We've been talking about Fanni Willis, the Fulton County prosecutor, who is she's the district attorney there, who's been going after Donald Trump. She alleges that he's been involved in a RICO case, a racketeering operation. But it looks like those very same charges could be turned against her, given that she and her boyfriend have collected upwards of $1 million now over the last 2 years and gone on a lot of fancy trips during that time frame. She says the people who are noticing and attacking her for it are racist. That's what she said from the pulpit of a church this weekend. For more on this, I want to bring in Will Scharf. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's a candidate for attorney general in Missouri, and he also has served on President Trump's legal team at times. Will, good to have you with us, sir. Thank you very much.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
This is a wild saga. How perilous is this for Fanni Willis?
Yeah, President Trump said it last week, and I think he's absolutely right. Fanni Willis is probably in more legal jeopardy than any of the defendants in this case that she's brought at this point. It's a really, really crazy story, and it speaks to serious misuse of public funds, obviously serious personal failings on her part. I think this whole prosecution is in danger of just falling apart. And it's really down to these really inappropriate actions that she and the special prosecutor appear to have taken.
Yeah, Nathan Wade, who's being paid $250 per hour in the gig. She claimed this weekend that she hired 3 special prosecutors. She paid them all the same rate, and only one of them is a black man, Nathan Wade, so therefore he's receiving the scrutiny. That was her claim. She is alleging that this was racism. What she didn't reveal was something that came out today. It turns out she's actually been paying the RICO expert that she hired, John Floyd, $150 an hour. She wasn't paying him the same rate at all. She's paying her boyfriend a lot more money, Will.
Yeah, I think it's worth backing up a second. So last week, Mike Roman, who's one of President Trump's co-defendants in this Georgia case, filed a motion that really brought this all to light for the first time. And what Roman alleges is that Fanni Willis inappropriately appointed this special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, didn't follow the normal processes for seeking approval for the appointment of a special prosecutor. She then has paid him over the course of this case over $1 million. And then some of that money he has spent on this illicit affair with her, that he's a married man. He's actually currently going through a divorce. And while he's been married, he's been taking her on vacations to the Napa Valley, on cruises, on vacation to the Caribbean. He's been lavishing her with gifts. And it raises a very serious question of whether Fanni Willis's actions here essentially converted public funds, in this case, actually federal COVID relief funds, for her own purposes. Mm-hmm. I think there's a very real possibility that this could be a federal crime, federal bribery, federal honest services fraud. These are very, very serious accusations, and it's only really coming to light because of this divorce case that Nathan Wade, her special prosecutor, is involved in.
Right, and Mike Roman's filing also indicated that the two may actually be living together as well, so that money could be going to pay for their living expenses.
It speaks very carefully about that. It says they've been cohabiting at a location that is neither of their residence. So that could mean a hotel room, that could mean a secret apartment. This is all sort of soap opera stuff, but just remember where we started. When this indictment was rolled out, the mainstream media breathlessly reported it as this ironclad legal argument that was finally going to get Trump. And again, sitting here today, I think Fanni Willis is in much more legal jeopardy than President Trump or any of his co-defendants are. It's just a crazy turn of events.
Now, I'm not even suggesting, Will, that you would ever commit a crime, but if you were to plan one out, why would you commit it as a part of the highest profile legal case in the country? Like, why would she use the money that is supposed to be going towards the prosecution of the former president of the United States and then give her boyfriend $1 million? Doesn't that's brazen?
If this were the plot of a movie, the movie would be rejected because it's too unbelievable. She took COVID relief funds, inappropriately hired a special prosecutor who was her affair partner, spent some of that money on lavish vacations, and all the while claimed the moral high ground and sort of thumped her chest, claimed that this was so important for the future of the republic that she go out and get Trump. I mean, it's a crazy story. And it really speaks to the depths that the left is willing to sink to if it serves their broader purpose of election interference here. But again, I mean, I think Fanni Willis has made a ton of mistakes here.
Yep.
Some of those mistakes are going to have very real legal consequences for both her and for her bogus special prosecutor, Nathan Wade.
Also, I still don't actually fundamentally understand why she's charging Trump at all. I mean, I understand it from the perspective of this is election interference, but the idea that they can even suggest that Donald Trump is guilty of racketeering because he was objecting to the way the election was conducted, how does that even begin to make sense?
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's the same with the ongoing D.C. federal prosecution against President Trump. President Trump had real questions about election irregularities in 2020. He set out to investigate those irregularities, and somehow they're now trying to say that those constituted criminal acts. I think what this prosecution is an effort at election interference stage managed by the Biden administration. It's worth noting that Nathan Wade spent 8 hours that he billed the state of Georgia for, in the White House counsel's office in November of 2022, on the very same day that Jack Smith, the special counsel, was appointed. So you have this series of events that seem to indicate that Georgia, Fanni Willis's office in Georgia, were coordinating with the White House counsel's office to bring these bogus prosecutions. And I think the only reason for that is what we all know the real reason is here, which is election interference, making sure that President Trump is tied down with legal matters so that he can't campaign as effectively as he otherwise would be able to.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe the White House allows for 8 hours of water cooler conversation with the White House counsel's office. Maybe he was just stopping in. Has that been your experience? The White House counsel's office normally can allot 8 hours for just hanging out?
That's not normally the way things work over there, but this is a highly irregular White House counsel's office. You had another guy, Colangelo, who worked with Tish James in New York in her AG's office, then showed up in the White House counsel's office, then seems to have been detailed out to Alvin Bragg, the New York DA who indicted President Trump on totally made-up business records charges. So you seem to have this White House counsel's office serving as a nerve center, this campaign of lawfare against President Trump. And it's just wildly inappropriate for federal employees, for taxpayer-funded employees, to be engaged in this sort of political activity.
Well, additionally, you had an aide for Jack Smith as well, who met with the White House before those charges were dropped on Trump. The New York Post reported at the time that Biden staffers did meet with special counsel Jack Smith's aides before the Trump indictment. So you're right. The White House has very much been the epicenter of all of these attacks on Trump across the country.
100%. I think the more that we find out about all of these prosecutions, the dirtier the whole process seems. And I just hope that the people responsible are held accountable. It seems like maybe Fanni Willis's day of reckoning is coming.
Yeah. Well, also another piece here is Nathan Wade also met with the House January 6th Select Committee as well, because so this is in addition to the White House. You've also got the J6 committee, which is, Nancy Pelosi special designed to hurt Trump and his supporters. You have Nathan Wade coordinating with Congress as well.
Well, in the January 6th committee, it's incredible what they did. They put together this selectively edited report. They then peddled it all over the country to people like Nathan Wade, to people like the folks out in Colorado who brought this effort to kick Trump off the ballot. And then they shredded all their files so that on the back end, nobody can look at the full body of evidence that they assembled and form their own conclusions. Unlike, for example, the 9/11 Commission or the Baker-Carter Commissions on elections after 2004, the January 6th committee was not an effort to discover the truth. It was ultimately just an effort to blame Trump. And that's not the way those sorts of investigations are supposed to occur. It's not the way they've ever occurred in the past. It really speaks to the irregularity of this campaign of lawfare that's being waged against the president.
So we began, Will Scharf, with our conversation on just Fanni Willis and how it appears she is in greater legal jeopardy right now than any of the people that she's prosecuting. But if we were to connect all of these dots, which of course we have over this conversation, all of these various Democrat prosecutors across the country constantly meeting with top Democrats officials at the White House and Benny Thompson, for instance, on the J6 committee, this is beginning to look to me like a criminal organization. I mean, to what extent can we say That this would be the kind of thing that would fall into the RICO law area rather than what Donald Trump has done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a RICO conspiracy specifically, but it certainly smells pretty dirty to me. Yeah. And you know, Alvin Bragg's prosecution is now falling apart over the fact that they're relying on Michael Cohen's testimony. You know, a serial perjurer who's gotten himself into legal trouble recently. And just up and down the line, these prosecutions are falling apart. You know, I used to be a federal prosecutor. We were trained that prosecutions are never supposed to be political. They're never even supposed to look political. These cases against President Trump, you know, that core principle just seems to have been thrown away. And I think all of these folks are going to end up in a lot of trouble just because of how badly they've behaved and how many rules they've run roughshod over here.
There's a bunch of things happening. One of them is Alvin Bragg's case is, of course, cartoonish, and so I think Trump will prevail on that one. But then you've got this Fanni Willis case, which seems to be collapsing under the weight of her own corruption. And then the Jack Smith case, you know, even the charges against Trump related to January 6th, a lot of it seems in peril right now because the Supreme Court is about to hear a case involving whether or not any of these J6 suspects even disrupted a congressional hearing, if they violated a law that was designed to prevent white-collar criminals from defrauding Congress. Is it your view that the legal picture has gotten a lot better for Donald Trump lately?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The case that you're speaking about is the Fisher case, which the Supreme Court took up. We're expecting a ruling on that by June. What basically happened there is that a bunch of January 6th defendants, hundreds of them, were charged under Section 1512C2, which is a subsection of the Federal Criminal Code that was enacted after, as part of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. This is sort of in the aftermath of Enron. And the idea was to penalize certain acts that interfered with congressional investigations, evidence shredding, that sort of thing. What they've done is they've applied that to January 6th protesters, saying that they obstructed an official proceeding, namely the electoral count process, and therefore what would otherwise be relatively minor misdemeanors, parading, you know, entering a building unlawfully, that sort of thing, should instead be prosecuted as felony offenses. Now, I think the Supreme Court is going to strike down that legal theory. I think it's just a bad theory. It's not well-founded. It doesn't accord with the text and structure of the statute at issue. Yeah. Significantly, 2 of the 4 charges against President Trump in this D.C. prosecution brought by Jack Smith use the same statute and the same theory. They're 1512C2 prosecutions. If those charges fall away, I mean, that's half the case right there. In addition to the other issues that we've raised in court, like presidential immunity, that I think should in and of themselves result in the dismissal of that case. Right,
and we're awaiting oral arguments in the Supreme Court very soon on Donald Trump being removed from the ballot in Colorado and Maine. So there's a lot of things moving very quickly, and again, I think to Trump's benefit here.
Yeah, the Colorado case should be a 9-0 opinion. I think the law is totally open and shut. The Supreme Court's hearing arguments on February 9th, but I expect we'll have finality on that issue of ballot access in relatively short order. It would be great to see the liberal justices vote with the law on that one. I think it's so clear-cut that it should be a 9-0 opinion. There's no grounds to keep President Trump off the ballot. This insurrection argument is just total garbage. Most legal commentators, even on the left, have said that publicly at this point. Yeah. So I'm hopeful. But, yeah, to get to your previous point, I think the legal picture is looking much better for President Trump now than it has before. I think in the weeks and months ahead, it's going to look even better.
Amazing. It's just amazing. Will Scharf, again, former federal prosecutor, candidate for Attorney General of Missouri. Thank you, sir, for your time today and your wisdom. Really appreciate that.